So first you start off with the customer, and the customer is either the general contractor and architect who's hiring you as the subcontractor to do a job, because most detailers work for a specific company. So then there's the design team, which I would end up being a part of, along with anybody who is underneath me, who I farm out little sections of the job to do. So as you probably know about the Kaiser that went up not that long ago over on Claremont Mesa Boulevard, that was my union, and that was, I believe, an 18-story building. That's not something that one drafter would be able to do by themselves. So each drafting drawing is put into sections, and each floor is put into a drawing.
So would that be like if they're each designing their own butterfly garden, drafting it,
Right.
then one person's would be the bottom, and then if we had them stacked up,
Right.
another person's butterfly garden would be the second story.
Exactly.
So,
and they all have to be able to, because there's plumbing and ventilation that each of those floors of plants would need for watering purposes and air and light and stuff, all the electricity that would need to be used for your lighting. All of that goes in each floor's set of drawings.
Oh, okay.
And they would all be different colors on the drawing, so it would be easily seen.
Each floor would be a different color?
No, each portion. So
okay. So
on
like
each
electricity would be one color?
Throughout the whole entire building, electricity would be, let's say, yellow.
Okay.
And HVAC would be blue.
Okay.
And plumbing would be purple, so that you know if something's going to run into something else, and how each one moves to each floor going up, and where the stairwells are so that you could access each floor. All those things are in each drawing. I mean, it's very complicated.
I'm sure.
So not just one person would be able to do something like that. I think on that particular one, for each of those trades, there was at least 5 drafters working on the entire building for more than 2 months.
Wow.
Before getting everything finalized to move on to actually guys going on the job site. So it takes a while.
Yeah.
It takes a lot of going back and forth. Then from the design team, it moves on to the management. So I would take my designs that me and my team made, and we would go to our boss and we would say, hey, we've completed this, we think it's ready. And then our boss would go to the estimating crew. And the estimating crew, who is also usually within the same company, comes up with all of the prices from the list that we made of how much material we need, how much, of each part we need. They would then go and find out how much all of that would cost. And from there, how many people it would take, and how many guys from ours, foremen, laborers, they're below apprentices. They're the guys who go around and clean up after everybody, because you can't have a dirty workplace.
Right.
Make sure you remember that when you're building, you can't have a dirty workplace.
Let's remember that in our classroom, because our workplace in the classroom gets quite dirty.
Oh, no, you can't.
I'm always telling them, clean up after yourself.
At my job, if something's dirty, it's not my boss that comes around and talks to us about it. It is the general foreman. The general foreman comes around because it causes a safety hazard.
So consider me your general foreman, and when I tell you to clean up the classroom, it's for your safety.
Yeah, it is. And my boss can actually get fined up to $1,000 per time that they have to come tell us.
Oh, I should start finding you guys, charging you for leaving your pens and pencils and materials on the floor. I think that's a great idea.
5 minutes out of their playtime. I think that's a good idea. All right. So then from the estimating department, they come back to the detailing department, and the detailers go and fix up everything, make sure it's all put together right. From there, it goes out to the shop. All my drawings end up going out to the shop for the smaller drawings that I did by hand, and
Like
those
this
guys, yeah,
Like this type we saw earlier.
those guys out in the shop figure all that stuff out by hand, drawing it out. I usually give them a paper like this, and they come up with one of those bigger sheets that I showed you earlier. Then once that's done and all the pieces have been made, then all those pieces get sent out and the guys get hired to go out to that job, and they're on the job for usually, most of the time it's usually maybe up to a month longer than we estimate, just because of all the extra problems and stuff we come across.
That's like when some of our projects take longer than I had planned for because things come up and we don't
Right.
realize that it might take a little longer to do this part or this part.
Right. So that's why. So it's, as far as that goes, it's always best to be flexible. You know, not everything has to remain the same in my field. They always say the only constant about life in our industry is change. It's that everything is going to change. So then after the field installation, then the customer comes back and they are satisfied with the job. We stay on the job until they're satisfied with the job, and then they get to move in.
That's great.
So,
And who puts together something like this? This is the teacher?
yeah, well, we're given a basic format by our union. My national union is called SMART, Sheet Metal, Air, Railroad, and Transportation.
Oh, wow.
So we actually are, we just integrated with the transportation system. So I was talking about transportation. So sheet metal is how you build all the railroads. It's how you build all the airplanes and the aircrafts and how we go up into space. Welders who use TIG, which is very fine welding. I might be able to bring you some of that too, because I have a welder at my house that I can use.
Okay.
But that's how those aircrafts are built, is people like me.
That's
So
amazing. So some of you who are learning in your Genius Hour projects about how to build a car or an airplane or things like that, you're going to need to learn a little bit about welding.
that's what I do, yes.
Yeah.
So the next class that I would have to take in my basic detailing class talks about contract documents. And contract documents are the lists, the estimations that I talked about earlier. So it says...
Is that actually the writing part?
Yeah, you have to write out, like, okay, so, contract document. So if Mrs. Lidoff was the customer and you were building her the garden, right? And you designed this beautiful garden and you had to make a list of all the materials you were going to need for this garden. So the wood, the number of plants, the
soil.
I don't know how you would water it, but yeah, the soil, the rocks, if you're going to do like a rocky path or tile or I don't know.
Whatever you're putting in the
garden. Right. So all those lists of things that you're going to need, and you write this list out. And then you go and you price it all out. How much is each one of those items going to cost? How many are you going to have? And you take that to her and you say, okay, and how much manpower you're going to need. So say on a job you were actually getting paid to do this, which you are in knowledge, you're getting paid.
Yes.
But out in the real world,
experience.
out in the real world, we're we're paid by money. And so you would have to know how much manpower you would need to build this project. And then you would take that to her and you would say, this group of guys is going to be doing this kind of job, so they need to be paid more. And this group of guys can be paid less because they're only going to be doing the cleanup. Okay, so then she knows how much she needs to fork over to make this project happen that she wants.
And this is when I'm telling you in your writing how I want you to use evidence and add details and explanations. You can't just say you need to pay someone $10 an hour. You need to say why. You need to explain it.
Right.
So this is also applied in real life. You can't just go to a boss and say you need to pay someone $10. You have to tell them why.
And you
justify
also you also have to justify why you are the right person for the job. Because there are different companies out there trying to get Mrs. Lidoff's business.
Yes.
Right?
And that's when we move into our persuasive writing soon. You're going to have to be able to convince other people to agree with you or choose you or whatever. So this is a good introduction into that.
So if your contract is the most convincing, then she would sign the contract and we would move to the next step. Once we get to class 3, we're working on shop drawing components, and that basically covers what is going to be needed from your foreman's shop drawings. So is he going to need to build square drawings or round drawings for difficult fittings that aren't usually manufactured?
Right, so for our purposes, you're all drawing rectangular drawings, but maybe down the road you'd want a circular butterfly garden or a triangular butterfly garden. So that's kind of what she's talking about.
Or a rectangle garden with a curving path.
Right,
So,
exactly.
That it all varies, and there's lots of things when you're building that you can include as little parts of yourself into what you're doing. That makes it personal for you, so that when you drive by, like when I drive by the Kaiser every day to go to work, I can say to anybody in the car, I built those kitchens. I did those stainless steel kitchens by hand from the ground up. So if you ever visit that hospital, that was me. So as far as class 4, it just basically talks about CAD. AutoCAD is that program that I was talking about, and
that's the computer program?
Right.
And is this the type of computer that you do it on?
Oh yeah. So
let's talk about this monster here.
Right before we run out of time.
I can bring the computer upstairs so we can look at it.
Every drafter needs a good computer, and this one of the parts alone was $800.
Wow.
So I think overall this computer cost me $5,000 altogether. Not including the monitor. I got that for free from my mom getting rid of one.
And that's why we're always telling you to treat your Chromebooks nicely, because they're expensive.
And you need them.
And you need them, yes.
So as far as drafting goes, this is the only tool I need. I can live without anything else. I can make my own straight edge. I could build my own, pencil if I had to from chalk made from the ground. But the computer I cannot live without, because I can't send or communicate with anybody without it. So those and
nowadays you do most of your designing on the computer.
Oh yeah, you can't design anything by hand, because then it takes too long for the mail to get to anywhere.
Right.
If you guys have any questions, then maybe you guys want to write down on a piece of paper different questions and stuff.
Yeah, we'll do that, and then I can get them to you before you come, and then you can answer them when you're there.
Right.
Yeah, that would be great. So I want to thank you so much for spending your Sunday with me and interviewing, because the kids, I'm always, like I said to you, trying to bring real world stuff to the kids. And why are we doing this? Well, because this could be a future career for you, and if you practice it now and maybe you enjoy it, it's something you can look at. So thank you so much.